It's one of the first times I feel like when you're reporting to the government, you're actually getting yourself off the radar versus putting yourself on the radar. So I really encourage all employers that have a plan in place to go report that you're exempt.
You just heard Jessica Johnson talking about California retirement plan requirements. Jessica Johnson with Hicks Pensions out of Fresno, California. Jessica provides qualified independent professional assistance related to qualified plans. She focused to help financial advisors build their qualified plan business with creative ideas to build and maintain their qualified plan business relationships. She works with CPAs to provide tax planning solutions for their clients. She assists ERISA attorneys with creative solutions that help their clients' unique situations and related to qualified plans. She's directly involved with the comprehensive plan review process and determining the plan design that meets the objective of the business owner. Sebastian has 15 years of financial service experience, specializing in a 401k retirement plans and a value up to $50 million. He's an extension of the advisor's team and a resource for everything 401k related. He helps put retirement solutions at the client's fingertips. Sebastian received his degree from Cal State University in Northridge. He's won multiple Transamerica awards. He's a certified plan fiduciary advisor, as well as a certified 401k professional. Sebastian lives in Los Angeles, enjoys skiing, snowboarding, hiking, whitewater rafting, skydiving, and restoring classic cars. In today's show, we discuss CalSavers and the California retirement mandate. And later in the show, we talked about alternatives to CalSavers with a compliant retirement program. And stay tuned to hear our guests with the rapid fire question and answer.
Welcome back to the Our 2 Cents podcast, the show where your local professionals sit down with an array of guests to hear their story and impart some wisdom for both business and life-improving skills. This is your place to hear business and community leaders discuss relevant topics that matter to you.
And welcome to the show today. My name's Troy Bird, and I'm your host to Our 2 Cents podcast. Before we get started today's episode, I encourage everybody to go to our brand new remodeled website and subscribe to our newsletter. And it's also a great way to communicate with us. But check us out on all the social media platforms. We do a lot of Instagram as well as LinkedIn. Very special episode today, a little spin-off on financial services, is more of a specialty segment. And I have a couple great guests. I have Sebastian as well as Jessica here. You guys, I'm happy to have you here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So before we get into too much detail, we're going to talk about retirement plans. And I want to know why there's been such a big buzz for the last 3 to 4 years in California about retirement plans.
Yeah, I'll start off and then maybe I'll pass it over to Jessica. But I think a lot of this stems both at the federal level and also at the state level. So there's been a lot of legislative changes coming at the federal level and at the state level. And so, JJ, if you want to talk about maybe the state level.
Yeah, so like specifically in California, they passed a law back in 2016 that has officially been rolled out. Essentially, every employer in California with 5 employees or more is going to be basically mandated to establish either their own private retirement plan or go with the state plan, which is called CalSavers. By now, I would hope most employers or all employers have heard about this mandate because it's already been rolled out. It's already in effect. It's rolling out in 3 phases. So the first phase is already passed. If you had 100 employees or more, you had to basically set up a 401k or one of the qualifying plans to be an exempt employer is what they're calling it by September 30 of 2020. Now, we already passed the 2021 deadline, which was June 30 if you had 50 employees or more. Now we're on to the next deadline, which is June 30, 2022. And that's if you have 5 employees or more, you're required, mandated to establish one of the qualifying retirement plans to be an exempt employer for the mandate, or you're required to go into the state option.
So you hit on a lot of things there, and I'm in the same arena you're in, so it's not news to me. But you said that you hope that most employers know about this mandate now. Out of your heart, do you truly believe they know about this mandate?
Not even out of my heart, out of my actual experience.
Okay, so you have factual information because you're making calls every day and they're going, what do you mean? I didn't know about this.
I'm coming across employers that have 100 or more employees that have still missed the deadline and weren't aware of it. I mean, or don't even know the mandate exists. And so it's just really incredibly important to kind of get the word out because the penalties are very, very hefty. And then what we didn't talk about was the 100, the 50, and 5 for the employee count. The definition of that was a lot of misconceptions is age 18, paid by W-2, and they work 30 days.
So that means everybody after
a month. Yep. They could work 1 hour a week.
help me out here. How are they communicating that with employers in California?
So the EDD is in charge of enforcement. The Treasury has the board that kind of created the CalSavers plan. They're sending out notices from the state, the EDD sending out notices, the record keeper that won the business, census is sending out notices. I mean, it's kind of coming from all angles. It's just, for some reason, some employers aren't aware of it. And what I've been seeing firsthand is some employers feel like, well, because of COVID, there's no way that the state's going to enforce this mandate. They're going to be lenient. They're going to push things off. There's no way they're going to enforce the penalties. And the case is that's not true. They're being very aggressive and very serious about this mandate. And we're seeing it firsthand, especially with our clients that had the 100 plus and above, like 800, 900, 5,000 employees,
right,
all the way down to like the 50 plus are getting hounded. And then as soon as an employer, if they didn't report their self-exempt, because let's say all of the Hicks clients are exempt because they have a retirement plan in place.
Okay, so if you have a qualified plan already, or you're putting one in, you're exempt from this California mandate, but you need to go on and say, I'm exempt because I have a plan with whoever.
You're not required to. However, this is one of the first times I feel like when you're reporting to the government, you're actually getting yourself off the radar versus putting yourself on the radar. So I really encourage all employers that have a plan in place to go report that you're exempt.
Okay.
Just because they leave you alone immediately. And we've seen that firsthand with our clients. Now, what I was going to say, so when the employers that didn't self-report they're exempt, ignoring the notices, the way that the notices were coming out, you haven't done anything, deadline's coming, to as soon as the deadline was in, you missed the deadline, you need to do something, big red bold letters. So, and then they're going to probably, the EDD is in charge of enforcement, start sending out penalty letters, just the word on the street here pretty soon.
So there's a couple other things that you mentioned, and Sebastian, I'll throw this one at you.
Sure.
I don't like more government regulations, and I definitely don't like mandates. However, America is not retirement ready.
Correct.
So to force an issue for people to plan or to save is unfortunate, but it is a good thing because we need to be retirement ready.
Correct. Yeah. The purpose behind it is, and that's why I don't like to bash on CalSavers too much, because the intent is good. There is a retirement crisis in this country, and it's not just California, it's all states. Oregon was the first state to actually do something similar. So the reality is that's correct. It's sometimes you kind of have to put some initiatives out there in order to provide alternative options as well for people to actually take action. So the intent is good. The execution is rough. There's still a lot of confusion, like JJ mentioned, but at the end of the day, there's reason behind it.
Well, I can tell you both firsthand experience from healthcare reform in 2010. I still meet with people today that still don't understand how it works and what they need to be doing. So it is very difficult to maneuver and understand. I have not had one person call me and say, I received a letter, I need to talk to someone about a retirement plan. Now, we've engaged with our relationships, and us as teams went out together and educated them. And quite honestly, CalSavers is a program that makes sense for some, but maybe not all. Just talk a little bit about the CalSavers program, and then we'll talk about alternative programs. But we already talked about who's qualified or who is in. And if I'm not mistaken, it's a automatic opt-in as an individual unless you opt out, which first thing I can think of is a large employer, possibly entry-level payroll nightmare.
Absolutely. The auto enrollment feature, again, good purpose, good cause. I mean, they're trying to get people to actually help themselves for the retirement, which again is a huge crisis. From an administrative standpoint, that's a pain point. That's a lot of administrative tasks. And so they're essentially being forced to administer a retirement plan, if you think about it. So
yeah, I mean, the auto enroll is, again, a way to nudge an employee, to start saving for retirement. And it's actually really effective. But the CalSavers alternative is a Roth contribution. So it's a 5% Roth contribution that the employer has to deduct from the employee's paycheck if the employee doesn't respond and come back with the form or go online and say, do not want to participate.
Okay.
So they're going to get their first check, and it's going to be a 5% Roth contribution lopped off right off the top of their check. Mm-hmm. And the demographic that we're trying to capture. So nobody
engages until that deduction happens, and then they're going, hey, what's this all about?
They get their check.
And they're all standing in front of payroll's office.
What is this deduction? Stop that. So then they have to stop it in payroll. Then they have to go to the record keeper that has the CalSavers plan, get that contribution back. I mean, it's just, I've worked with a lot of, let's say, farm labor contractors.
Exactly.
I got a crash course over the last year and a half, and they have a very unique, employee demographic. They, it's just very, very unique. And some of the employers that I was working with, they were like, Literally, I have employees coming in, their paycheck will be 10 cents off. I thought he was joking.
Right.
He said, no, they will come in,
Yep.
get their new paycheck. And he's like, I will have employees protesting outside of my building. You know, the issue is they're going to get this enrollment kit, and maybe it comes in a language that, you know, maybe it's not their spoken language. Maybe it comes in Fresno, we have a big Hmong community. Maybe
Sure.
it comes in English. Now the kids are all home. Maybe it's an event for the kids to run out to the mailbox because they're all been quarantined for the last year and a half, get the mail, throw it in the junk mail. The point is that there's going to be a lot of auto enroll that the employer is going to have to track and set up in payroll.
Well, and you mentioned farm labor, and, you know, with seasonalities, people might work for 3 months and they're off, then they're back on. And, you know, it's just a revolving door in payroll. Before we get into alternatives, if employers ignore this, give me some examples. Not to scare the death out of people, but just so they understand it's really real. What kind of penalties are employers seeing if they ignore this completely and don't engage on the timeline that's specified?
So in the law, it's at 90 days of notice of violation. So you get a notice, which is about to start coming out here, we think fairly soon from the EDD.
Because our last requirement was 50 and up, and that was 630. Is that correct?
Correct.
So here we are finishing July. So, okay.
Right. And think about it. It's not who you have on payroll right now at 50 when it's June 30. They're using the EDD following three quarters average of the employee.
Okay.
So that's going to pull in all the seasonals, pull in everybody that's at that age 18 W2
See, those are the
days.
things, the technicalities that people don't. It's just
a misconception.
Yeah. It's like, well, we only got 37. It's like, well, yeah, but you just came off a big season and you had way over. So
pain point.
Those are hard for people to understand, and that's where you come in.
Sure. The easiest way for me to explain, like, when does the mandate apply to my business? So let's say we're in 2021. How many W-2s did you issue in 2020? If it was more than 50, then you need to do something this year. You already missed the deadline. And then let's say if you're really close to 50, then we can split hairs and say, okay, how many people worked less than 30 days? And then maybe you can wait one more year. That's kind of the easiest way for me to explain it. So at 90 days of notice of violation, it's $250 per eligible employee with that definition that we've talked about. Then at 180 days of non-compliance, so you still haven't done anything, which means, you know, setting up a qualified retirement plan when in one of their qualifying lists of options, or going in the state option. Now we're at additional 500. So it's $750 per eligible employee is the penalty. And what's scary to me is that's all that's in the law. So what happens if they still don't comply? How often do you assess that? How, you know, what happens when you're in the CalSavers plan and the EDD comes in and audits you, because they're going to audit their plan to make sure you're operating it properly, the state plan. Then what are the penalties for that? And they don't know.
Right.
Which is, for me, the unknown of like the penalties like that is a little bit frightening.
Yeah, we've seen it in a lot of different industries, the health insurance industry, obviously, and I have seen many of those letters from the federal and state level, and they are hundreds of thousands. Normally, most of those letters that apply to my relationships, they're incompliant, but somebody still went outside of the requirements and perhaps maybe went to the exchange or whatever and created an audit. And the letter comes out first, and then you got to prove, no, we're in compliance. Look, we offered it to this person, and he wasn't eligible for that subsidy. So, but it's a tremendous amount of work. Mm-hmm. Sebastian, let's talk options. So we know what CalSavers is. It's a fit for some, but not for all. Could be a payroll nightmare. You're with Transamerica. You've been in the retirement arena for a long time. Obviously, Transamerica is a 100-year-plus company. We know all about them. What kind of programs or alternatives that employers should be looking at before they just fold and say, okay, let's just jump in?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And ultimately, a true tried and tested retirement plan, a 401k plan, is always a good alternative to CalSavers because it allows for alternative plan design. So you can actually design and customize a retirement plan to meet the needs of the employer as opposed to CalSavers.
Which is very rigid, and it is what it is. It's cookie cutter, and this is take it or leave it, but this is what it is. You can't modify.
You nailed it. Exactly. So 401k plans have been around for a long time. Nothing new. So that right off the bat is a good alternative. Now, everything that we just finished talking about is at the state level. So meanwhile, at the federal level, there's something called the Secure Act that passed in December of 2019.
Okay.
All right. All of that got drowned out because of the pandemic and the political situation, et cetera, et cetera. Within that law, the Secure Act, there's a lot of provisions in there that actually allow retirement plans to actually become a lot easier to roll out. So there's a lot of hesitancy, if you will, with retirement plans around cost and administration. That's usually the two biggest issues there. The Secure Act has a tax credit built into it that amplifies a tax credit, I should say, that makes actually rolling out an alternative to CalSavers easier to do.
So the government's incentivizing people through tax credits, employers, to put in a plan, and they can take the credits probably phased out, probably what, 1 or 2 years?
3 years? 3 years, exactly. 3 years, exactly. And there's a formula to it. But at the end of the day, the point is it's easier to roll out a retirement plan, to start a retirement plan now more than ever. And if I may, there's also what's called the Secure Act 2.0, which is hopefully soon to pass. At the end of this year, hopefully, we'll know. No one, I don't think anyone really knows. But within there, there's also an additional provision that'll actually amplify that even further. So the amount of the tax credit is actually going to increase, hopefully, with Secure Act 2.0. So while the states are mandating retirement plan programs, essentially, the federal government, like you said, is making it a lot easier to actually roll them out. So a 401k plan is always going to be a good alternative. Within that, and not to get too complicated, but there's also the concept of a multiple employer plan. And you're going to hear a lot more about MEP plans in the future. Now and in the future. Ultimately, a multiple employer plan is a retirement plan that allows employers to adopt into it. Okay. Usually you have to have what's called the nexus, so some type of commonality, but not common interest. That's the key part.
So commonality, same industry, same geographical area, same, am I close?
Yeah, so not necessarily geographic. So if anything, think of an association. That's a perfect example of a good solution for a multiple employer plan. Okay. An association. Any type of association.
Farm Bureau.
There you go. So anyone that's part of that association can join that multiple employer plan. So you're effectively gaining strength in numbers, aggregate pricing, simplified administrative solutions.
So it's a co-op approach. So it's me and multiple people in the same industry jumping in together.
You can look at it that way, but however, and here's the unique concept of a multiple employer plan, you still have your own individual plan, individual customization. Okay. It's not cookie cutter. And that's really what sets us apart, if I may say. The bottom line is you can customize your own retirement plan within a multiple employer plan and still gain all the benefits of it, right? Strength in numbers, like we talked about, pricing, administrative relief.
Because like some employers may not want to do a match. Some might want to have 6-month eligibility where their employees have to wait 6 months and not a year. And so we're able to individually design these plans based on the objective of each employer that adopts into the multiple employer plan.
That's one of the hardest things I recognize with the CalSavers program is eligibility is basically 30 days of employment.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And I don't know anyone that does that on a retirement plan. 6 months is usually very typical, or even longer in some cases. So I can see that. So is this a new concept? Has this been around forever?
It's definitely not new. Multiple employer plans have been around for actually a long, long time. We've actually been working on them the longest, about 2 decades at this point. And ultimately, MEPs, if you will, multiple employer plans, are not new. Now, within that Secure Act that passed, again, in December of 2019, there's another provision in there that made multiple employer plans a lot easier to actually roll out, a lot easier to basically create. That really turbocharged the entire multiple employer plan market space, if you will. And so now a lot of providers like Transamerica are essentially rolling out several multiple employer plans for, as a solution. But more importantly, there's provisions within there that allow for different types of multiple employer plans. So something called a PEP, for example, a pooled employer plan, is a type of multiple employer plan. However, you don't have to have a nexus. You don't have to have that type of commonality. Anyone can join it. Now, we don't have enough time on the show to go into all the details of a PEP, as they're called, pooled employer plan, but ultimately that came into effect actually in 2021. All of these solutions are great alternatives to CalSavers is the point. So multiple employer plans, pooled employer plans, and then you're also going to hear a lot about group of plans, GOPs. Some folks call them exchanges. Some folks call them open MEPs. But at the end of the day, it's a collection of retirement plans all under effectively one large contract.
More acronyms in the financial industry to add, right?
The alphabet soup. I would just say, we're still not going to lose the consulting aspect with each employer of what makes sense for them. And it's really our job to sit down with each employer and help them understand what their options are, what the alternatives are, what makes sense, what are their objectives. Are you just trying to check the box because of CalSavers, or do you really want, give the benefit to your employees and have a match? And so we're not going to lose that aspect. We're just sometimes getting to the table because of this mandate now.
Right.
But we're still going to individually design and help each client based on their objectives. And that's our job. So they don't have to know the alphabet soup.
Exactly.
We kind of break it down in a really simple way and help them know what they can do.
Well, I understood what you were explaining, Sebastian. However, tell me why I would do one of those programs rather than just calling you and says, hey, I need to put a 401k in. I have a group of 25 people.
Yeah, the reality is the conversation starts with that, and JJ kind of alluded to it, with that discovery call, with identifying what the needs are. It can be traditional 401k plan, or you can fit into a multiple employer plan, or a pooled employer plan, or the GOP plans, if whatnot. But the straightforward answer is strength in numbers. So oftentimes, a multiple employer plan has aggregate pricing, meaning strength in numbers, like I said earlier. So the pricing is a lot lower right off the bat. So that's first and foremost.
Because fees are typically based on assets in plans?
Correct. That's
so
correct.
When we get into a group plan, if you want to call it, obviously there's going to be more assets. And if you're a startup with zero, you're going to pay very high fees. So now you can enjoy that big company feel and be a small employer?
That's exactly correct. That's the best way of putting it. So you're getting the pricing of call it a multi-million-dollar plan at the startup plan level. And moreover, in MEPs, multiple employer plans have come a long, long way. So we don't really build these unless there's what's called a 316. I know it's another term,
yes,
but essentially administrative relief and administrative fiduciary relief. So we're trying to take off as much work as possible off the client's plate.
You know, I've talked about retirement plans for years, and there's a few things I get pushback on, which obviously you do too. The first thing is my employees won't participate. To me, that's lack of education.
Correct.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's very difficult to do, but you got to get engagement, obviously. Number two is the cost. And number three is the compliance nightmare. And, you know, there's enough regulations in the world already. And every day there's 2 more added. So when you say you're taking those compliance nightmares off of an employer, what does that mean, JJ?
So essentially, if they're going into a MEP, let's say,
yes,
we're taking on all the administrative burden. So we're distributing notices, we're approving processing distributions, we're preparing, signing 5500, we're maintaining the plan document. I call it just complete autopilot for the employer. They just push payroll. So we're doing all the work on the back end for a really affordable price. I'm not selling that. That's because of the aggregated assets of the plans.
No, I understand.
It's just complete autopilot for the employer.
So as the TPA, you do the 5500 system, basically. You don't sign it, but you basically do it for them and you prep it.
Yeah.
The required notifications, which is a couple times a year. Mm-hmm. So the full fiduciary responsibility. How about looking at funds and determining if they're performing to the standards of the group and things like that?
And I'll comment 2-part here. So one, you could never fully jump out of the fiduciary boat.
Right.
You can mitigate it as much as what's allowed in the marketplace. And that's what 316 does from an administrative standpoint. From an investment standpoint, there exists what's called 321 and 338. That's usually the most common. So 338 is a full investment fiduciary. And so selection of the investments at the main contract level, but more importantly, the monitoring of those investments is taken care of by that 338 investment fiduciary.
So it's taken off the employer. It's not their
Exactly.
responsibility.
And when we talk fees or cost of a plan, does that direct impact to the employer, or is that also shared with the participants?
So it depends on the structure that they want. So there's a way to structure it where it's all paid by the participants. It's also structured to where it's paid by the employer, or both. There's a lot of flexibility there.
We've been encouraging, because of the tax credit that substantially increased, so you can potentially get up to $5,000 a year for the next 3 years if you establish a retirement plan.
Well, that's pretty good.
There's a weird formula, so I say talk to your CPA.
Okay,
You
yeah.
can't get more than what what you're actually spending in expenses. So what we've been doing is, if the employer cuts a check for my cost, maybe pulls out some of the record keeping expense, which I don't, any of the plan expenses, if they do a match, it's going to go towards that credit. So we try to pull out as much as possible to get that $5,000 potential tax credit that's available with expenses for the next 3 years. And let's say year 4 reassess, maybe we won't have to because of what Sebastian was talking about, the Secure Act 2.0 that's passing that might waive all, basically it was like 100% potentially
hopefully,
the credit for all plan expenses. So I feel like the stars aligned for California employers with this law that was passed in December of 19, because our mandate rolled out in 2020 because of this tax credit. Because they're forced to do something, but now there's this bigger tax credit. It used to be $500 for 3 years.
Right. That's kind of what I was thinking.
So it went up from $1,500 to $15,000 potentially.
So I'm going to go off on a limb and just put you right on the spot. most employers on the startup plan, are they seeing a $5,000 cost first year?
No, I don't think it's that high. No.
I didn't think so.
No.
Maybe, $3,000 or, I mean, I'm just throwing out numbers because it's like, it's based on a participant count and, how many employees you have. So most are not spending that much. However, if they decide to do a match, like a 4% match, that can all go towards that cost. So I mean, potentially, if they do a profit sharing, we can try to use up as much as possible.
So I want to go off in a little bit of the weeds and talk about plan design, but really kind of more of a compliance side of some of the feedback I get when I mentioned participation was low. Typically, highly compensated take advantage of this. They understand the concept. They love it. Employers' first response could be, I don't know if I want to match, and do I have to match every year? So that's obviously a discussion that we have a lot. And then, what about that discrimination testing? So let's talk about your services and how does that work with these programs we're talking about?
When you're set up a retirement plan, we have to figure out what the objectives are. Do the owners want to participate themselves as business owners? Do they have highly compensated employees? Is this sheerly an employee benefit that the owners don't want to participate in? And then that kind of leads us into, and the other question is, how much money would you like to put away? What was your taxable liability on the business corporation that you had to pay? We kind of back into a retirement plan solution that makes the most sense, including plan design. So, I mean, I don't want to get into testing right now.
No, I know.
Everyone will go to sleep.
But people know that there's such a thing, and it's like, I can't do this because my management team's going to jump all over it. But the other 75 are doing nothing. So this thing will never fly. So
there are ways to get around that. Right. A committed contribution from the company, but that's going to incentivize the employers, the highly compensated. There might be people that are watching this that they have a plan that they're like, why can't I put more money into it? I keep getting a check back every year, and that's because we're failing testing, but that could be fixed. So
what I hear you saying, JJ and Sebastian, and I know this firsthand because we work together, is it's a team approach.
Absolutely.
Between you at the carrier level, me as an advisor, JJ as a TPA, as well as maybe even a CPA in most cases, possibly even an ERISA attorney if it gets really technical.
Yeah, absolutely.
And trying to find out a solution. And some of the things that I've seen a lot of pushback on, and it's very unfortunate, but entry-level jobs that are going to qualify for these programs. I'm talking restaurant workers, and bless their heart, we need them, but it is an entry-level position, are going to qualify for these programs and probably not want to participate. And employers' fear is if I do a match, all of a sudden I have everyone wanting to participate, and maybe I don't have the financial stability to do that. And we did some plans in the ag industry, JJ.
Yeah.
And we structured it very creatively because not to discriminate, but to respect the fact that most employees there did not want to contribute. So we made the structure of the plan somewhat, I don't want to call it hard, but we passed the test, and if they're there for a year, they can participate. But we eliminated a tremendous amount of seasonality of people.
Right.
And it lowered the liability of the employer. And these are the things that we do when we sit down at the table and find out what that objective is. So that was an example of what we did. But JJ, go a little deeper, in Sebastian, tell me what's some of the creative things employers can do and feel comfortable about this decision, because everyone needs a retirement plan at some point in their life, and hopefully it's not at 55.
Yeah, that's just it. So not to reverse it in a way, but there's folks that actually want to make sure that their employees actually join the plan.
Right.
I think, and that's tremendously important. So the education portion of a plan is huge. I always talk about the 4 pillars of a plan. You have to have these following 4 pillars to have a strong plan, and that's service, education, compliance, which you mentioned earlier, and investments. And so the education is a huge pillar of a retirement plan. And a lot of carriers, obviously including us, Transamerica, we have an unbelievable amount of resources to help with that education. And so I think to kind of get to the point, there's definitely exist employers that kind of want to mitigate that match, but then there's also the opposite. And so I think helping educate employees is key, I think.
So once an employee says, hey, I do not want to participate, and I'm talking back to that entry-level position, and they sign a waiver says I'm out. Are they out until they want to get in, or because I believe CalSavers is going to come up every year probably?
Yeah. So in a 401k, essentially you have to prove. So let's say you have your eligible employees based on the eligibility we set. So let's say it's age 21, 1 year service, 1,000 hours. Let's say that's eligibility.
Okay.
So those employees meet that eligibility. You give them, let's say, an enrollment form. Nowadays things are really electronic. Let's keep it old school. You hand them a packet to fill out. You have them sign off that they received it. And in a 401k, as long as you can prove that you gave them, you offer them the plan, you never have to get that back. You can just, put that sign-in sheet. If you ever get pulled for an audit, you say, no, I offer this plan to this employee. You don't have to go track down, all the enrollment forms. In the CalSavers alternative, it's kind of the exact opposite. Assuming there's no auto-enroll in the 401k, right? So we're just going simple 401k. Yes. CalSavers auto-enroll, if they don't respond, you have to track who responded and who didn't respond. Everybody that's on staff that age, 30 days from data hire, because they get auto-enrolled at 60 days from data hire. So did they respond and they actually want to participate? At what rate? Did they not respond? Now we have to auto-enroll them at 5%. Did they opt out? Okay, they opted out. I don't have to worry about them. That's not even going into the auto escalade that has to be tracked in the CalSavers plan. I just say I call it auto-enroll on steroids.
Yes.
And I feel like if, as a consultant, sitting down with employers, if I was to design the state plan for an employer, they would fire me immediately once they realize what I signed them up for. Because there's an administrative aspect to a retirement plan that we have to be mindful of when we're setting that up for an employer, that they can manage it. So, if they want to roll out a plan, as an employer for their employees or whatever the objective is, we have to design it so they can manage it. And now when you go into like the map that, Sebastian was talking about earlier, that's total autopilot. So we can get really creative because we're managing all that for them. But if they're going to have an independent plan, which we're still going to do a lot of those, right, then we have to make sure that they're comfortable on a day-to-day.
So it's truly a visit of consulting, first visit, finding out the objectives, and then figuring out what vehicle works best for that employer.
Right.
Yep.
Plan design is so important right now because, like you said, we've had some mutual clients that we just knew, the employer knew. They know their employees better than we do, that they just were not going to participate because they're not comfortable with it for whatever reason. And so we can design that so we can potentially just not cover those employees and we can just get really creative. We've had some pretty interesting conversations, though, because it's pulling in types of employers that would have never established a retirement plan in the first place. A lot of ag, hospitality, and the state's actually admitting that ag and hospitality are getting impacted the hardest by this. And I feel that because I'm born and raised in the Central Valley. That's my territory, up and down the 99, my mobile office, before I got locked up. And so just ag is such a big part of obviously our communities, and I see the impact firsthand.
I think there's a lack of education on the employer's side because they realize that typically, hey, we got a great management team in this corporation. I'll pick on ag, and they would all participate, but I have 1,000 field workers that want no part of it. And so they feel like we can't do it. And that's where we were creative and be able to put a plan in and keep them exempt from the CalSavers program. Mm-hmm. And we'll allow the field workers in with certain requirements, but in most cases, it takes off the huge burden of payroll and everyone coming in and says, I want to opt out every single year. So I can only imagine in the last 3 years, you two have been very busy.
Yes, to say the least. There is a lot of wind in the retirement plan sails, if you will. Like I mentioned earlier, at the state level, like JJ talked about, at the federal level with everything that's already out and coming. Yeah, definitely busy.
The state's estimating, and I don't know if there's a new number because this is just when I was researching it back in 2019, but they were estimating there's anywhere between 200,000 and 250,000 employers in California that are going to be impacted by this mandate.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? That means employers that don't have one of the qualifying retirement plans in place.
Yeah, and let's remember that small businesses make up a significant, it's actually more than 90% of businesses in the United States of America. So absolutely.
Next year, 2022, I would just start preparing now. And one of my arguments is if, you're going to fall in 2022, why not let's set up something now or at least start having the discussion, because then we can roll it out January 1, 2022. And then your employees have the entire year to, save
Right.
for retirement. You're taking advantage of the entire year, and you're not waiting to the last minute when everyone's going to be flooding in at the last minute to try to get one of the qualifying plans in place. And maybe the state says, sorry, we're closed for business. We have too many employers. We can't,
Sure.
manage you, go out to the private market.
Yeah, there's going to be a tidal wave at the end, so planning ahead is being proactive makes a lot of sense.
And one of the things too is like my fees aren't prorated. So you're going to pay me my,
Yeah,
my
you're fixed fees because you're the
Exactly.
third-party administrator, so
Yeah.
you do the
Like a
record
CPA,
keeping,
right.
bookkeeping, yes. And so I'll pick your brain a little bit here. What kind of advice would you give an employer? And I don't want it to gear it to you, but
Yeah.
regarding retirement plans, what are we encouraging them to do right now?
I don't know if I'd use the word advice, but I would recommend in a certain way to reach out to your financial advisor. Reach out to someone because there are alternatives. And there's a lot of moving parts in a retirement plan. There's a lot of moving parts to CalSavers. There's a lot of laws that are changing. There's a lot of laws that came out like we just talked about. I think step one is reach out to someone, your financial advisor, your CPA, what have you, and start there. And the good news here is that there's alternatives, right? A 401k plan, there's MEPs, there's pooled employer plan. There's a lot of different alternatives to help customize a retirement plan solution for that employer. That's what I would say.
Well, I'm going to give you my 2 cents.
I see what you did there. I see what you did.
I'm talking to employers every day like you. The biggest problem right now is recruitment
Yep.
and retention.
Yeah.
And the better your benefits, the better your succession rate. So
Absolutely.
it's really important. You want to
Yeah.
add something to that?
Yeah,
JJ?
I mean, I have a really big territory. I sit down with a lot of employers, and regardless of the industry, I think everyone is having an issue, attracting employees, retaining employees, getting employees just to come back from work, especially in the restaurant industry. And, even though potentially we're getting to the table because we're talking about CalSavers and that's do something anyways, every single time it comes out, it's like, I've been needing to do this. I've just been busy. I have employees asking for it. I mean, I have employers telling me they have kids coming out of college with no work experience, and they sit down the interview and they say, do you have a 401k and do you have a match? Mm-hmm. They have no work experience. They have a college degree, and I guarantee they can't even spell 401k,
Right.
but they know to ask.
Well, how many times have you heard in your life, probably from an adult, probably your parents at one time, that you should start saving in your retirement when you're about 19 years of age? If
As
you're
soon as you
working,
can.
if you're the first
Yeah.
job you get, start contributing, and it just becomes an automatic lifestyle, and you'd be setting very well at retirement age. And it's sad working in the financial arena. I can't tell you how many people I've met that come in and says, we want to start a financial plan. Great, good decision. Unfortunately, you're already 55, big debt. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
We should have started this 30 years ago. But it is a problem. And I do like some of the mandates, but again, I don't like another mandate from the government saying that an employer has to required to do this. So I'm going to have a little fun because you guys are my friends. Kind of break it up a little bit.
Yeah.
And we're going to get a little personal with JJ and Sebastian.
All right.
So I'm going to probably ask you both a couple of the same questions. So JJ, who's your biggest mentor?
Honestly, I really genuinely think it would be my boss, Kathy Hicks.
Very nice.
So I've been with Hicks for 12 years, and I call her like a sister, maybe an aunt. And I really respect her, and I've learned a lot from her. I started when I was really young. I didn't even know what a TPA was when I started at my company. So I didn't even know what we did. And I've just learned a lot. I really respect her management style, how she's treated me. And I've learned a lot from her. I think I've become a different woman, really.
Well, your firm is very well known. How long they've been around?
53 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Still family owned and operated, which we're incredibly proud of.
Right out of Fresno?
I feel like I'm part of the family. Actually, most of our staff does. Yep, in Fresno. And we have an office in Hawaii and San Luis Obispo. The youngest son got the Hawaii office, Mike Hicks. I don't know how that happened. But
That would be a nice gig. But
yeah, right?
probably not reasonable, but sure would be nice. Sebastian,
Yes, sir.
what's the best advice you've ever received and why?
And I always butcher this because I can't remember how it was said, but it's stuck in my head. And it's just to essentially live your life. Don't be too conservative. Try to have some fun. And when I say conservative, I don't mean that in a political or religious way.
No, I get it.
I mean to
Loosen up.
actually, exactly, yeah, that life is short, so to speak. And I took that to heart. I was told that and taught that at an early age. And so, Just don't let your life kind of pass by you.
You might live longer too. That stress level.
That's what they say.
Easier said than done.
Yeah.
JJ, I'll ask you both of you this one. That's kind of a setup so he can think about it. But what is something that no one knows about you?
A lot of things. So let's see. There's quite a few things probably. I like to paint. I'm a really good cookie maker. Really good cookie maker.
Nice.
I think I've told you that
She
before.
said that last time.
And you
but
didn't ask me
she
last
didn't bring
time.
cookies either.
No, I know.
I could use
And
I
I
make
remember
chocolate chip
saying, we'll
cookies.
have you back and
Yeah.
you bring the cookies.
Next time.
And we both fell down.
Well, I did make a lot of them in quarantine for sure when I was home a lot.
Right.
But
Sebastian?
So I was once in a movie. I was in Jane Austen's Mafia. Short couple scenes. I got my 15 minutes of fame as a child.
Have you seen it, JJ?
no, I haven't.
I
No,
haven't.
I'm
I
gonna
don't
have to
tell a
watch
lot
it.
of people that, and so I'm actually embarrassed. I even mentioned it on
Mafia,
here, but
right?
Yes,
I don't
yeah,
even
it's
know
called
that.
Mafia.
I thought
yeah.
you were going to go with the classic car habit.
Oh yeah, I should have stuck to that.
I said habit, hobby. Yeah.
hobby. Yeah. So
Yeah,
there we go.
I would have never guessed.
I know.
Well, I value you guys as partners and friends, and your service is very well needed. And I love the fact that you're not a big salesy type people. You're out to educate, and if it makes sense, people engage.
Thank you.
So with that being said, JJ, why don't you tell us the best way to get a hold of you if someone wants to inquire start to talk about the retirement arena?
Yeah, so my cell phone, which is my only line,
Yeah.
559-779-8351. Had it since I was 16.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, long time. And then my email is JJ, my initials, at hickspensionservices.com.
And there'll be show notes as well on the podcast for anyone that wants to didn't have a chance to write this down to get back to us. And Sebastian, how do we get a hold of you?
So I would say I am strictly through financial advisors. So contact your financial advisor or your CPA, if you will. So or contact Troy directly. So
Very good. Well, guys, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. Can't wait for the next one.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for
Troy.
having us.
This show has been brought to you by the Law Office of Kyle Jones, Troy Burden with the Lynn Company, CPA John Duffield, Scott Hansen, real estate lender, broker, and investor, and Eckroth, LLC, a sales and marketing agency. You've been listening to the Our 2 Cents podcast. Check out the show notes for links and more information about the show. Also visit our website at our2centspodcast.com or check us on Instagram at Our 2 Cents Podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe.